Not a little fussed, we drove into the shaded lane, leading up to its great portal, whence at the sound of wheels in the drive the man himself emerged, smiling a welcoming greeting. "Well, you are in earnest, aren't you?" He was a large, ruddy, well-built man with a fine head firmly set on broad shoulders, 6 feet and over, clad in grey tweeds with a bicycle cap perched on greying thin hair. Through silver-rimmed glasses he fairly beamed good-humoured kindliness. He did not look at all like an artist. Few of the big ones do. With his large build, small, well-formed hands and feet, he rather suggested an English squire who you felt would wear formal dress during the London season with the same unconscious grace with which he wore his tweeds. Perhaps it was a flat square inch or so of burnside on his cheek that made this comparison possible. I know that was what made him recall to my mind a portrait I had seen of Sir John Millais. At his brisk, "Well, what have you to show me?" the big moment had arrived. He was most encouraging, more appreciative perhaps than the work warranted, and during his enlightening talk there on the long, broad porch, while the deepening shadows crept up among the mellowing trees, we learned more about the requirements of an illustrator than we had ever dreamed of. But it seemed he was looking for younger students. I had reached the advanced age of 26, of a more pliable age, into whose minds he could instill his own theories, which seemed so extremely practical. With all his practicality, he was a good deal of a mystic, and much of what he said was tinged with the philosophy of Swedenborg. During that eventful hour, a sweet-faced woman appeared in a shadowy doorway with some papers in her hand and softly announced that William was about to leave with the mail. She called him Howard, a familiarity, we thought. He excused himself for a moment to sign a few letters. Quite suddenly a sturdy, bright-faced lad popped up on the porch to show Father a cap full of chestnuts he had gathered. There were 5 other youngsters, we were told, evidently from the sounds coming from that direction having a good time somewhere back in the orchard. The light was going, and we prepared to depart. He was concerned about our having something to eat, but we felt the horse needed some consideration, and we left, buoyed up with encouragement and elated by his assurance that we would be welcome at his weekly Monday night lectures and privileged to bring our work for criticism at any time. We were scarce out of earshot when we turned toward each other with the same thought. Well, we didn't quite make the grade, but wasn't he great? We eventually entered the class itself, but that's another story. Even so, we had achieved one big ambition. We had met Howard Pyle. Forward. After several years of contemplation and of thought upon the matter herein contained, it has at last come about by the grace of God that I have been able to write this work with such pleasure of spirit that if it gives to you but a part of the joy that it hath afforded me, I shall be very well content with what I have done. For when in pursuing this history I have come to consider the high nobility of spirit that moved these excellent men to act as they did, I have felt that they have afforded such a perfect example of courage and humility that anyone might do exceedingly well to follow after their manner of behaviour, in such measure as he is able to do. For I believe that King Arthur was the most honourable, gentle knight who ever lived in all the world, and those who were his fellows of the Round Table, taking him as their looking-glass of chivalry, made altogether such a company of noble knights that it is hardly to be supposed that their like will ever be seen again in this world. Wherefore it is that I have had such extraordinary pleasure in beholding how those famous knights behaved whenever circumstances called upon them to perform their endeavour. So, in the year of grace 1902, I began to write this history of King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, and if I am able to do so, I shall endeavour, with love of that task, to finish the same at some other time in another book, and to the satisfaction of whoever may care to read the story thereof. The Book of King Arthur. Prologue. In ancient days there lived a very noble king named Arthur Pendragon, and he became overlord of all of Britain. This king was very greatly aided unto the achievement of the Pendragonship of the realm by the help of 2 men who rendered him great assistance.